Kim Hand, can you please just share with us why you decided to become a franchise owner, especially the first franchise owner? Because that's a pretty big leap right there. Could you share that with us?
Yeah, sure. That's kind of where I was getting, right? So, I wanted to own my own business, and I never thought that I would own a franchise, to be completely honest with you. It's not what I was looking for, but I stumbled randomly across Brooklyn Robot Foundry, and after I had my son, he was about just about 6 months old at the time that I found the foundry. And I was immediately drawn in to um, not only what they did, because my background is engineering, but how they did it and how they approach kids. And I really thought um, that I wanted to learn more about it. So I went through the discovery process and really just fell in love with everything about it and the fact that I could own a business. It could give me flexibility to be with my family when I wanted to be with my family. I was commuting an hour to and from work every day, so that's 2 hours of my day that was completely um, not devoted to anything except car time. Um, so it kept me more local also in my area, my region, and really kind of gave me a little bit of um, I just had so much excitement around what it could be, that the number of kids that I could reach, especially kids that maybe wouldn't have the opportunity to do robot building in any other in any other way. And when I kept going back to when I was little, I would have loved to be a robot builder. When I the ages that we're talking about, when I was those ages, I would have loved to do that. And so being able to be the person to bring that to kids, um, and through the foundry, it really just spoke to me, and I get to run my own business, which I always wanted to do. So that's really kind of what led me mentally through the discovery process and eventually to becoming a franchise owner. And being the first one, um, honestly didn't really phase me all that much, because I feel like during the discovery process that I was able to build enough of a relationship with Brooklyn Robot Foundry, not only the business itself, like going through the process of what my business is going to look like, and what kind of expenses I would have, and all that goes around with the development of the business, but also with the people at the foundry that I was able to talk to and meet. I felt like I had built up those um, those relationships enough where that if I got stuck, they would be there for me, right? Because their goal as franchisor and our goal as franchisee are both the same, and that's to have a successful franchise. So I didn't really fear going into it being the first one, because they want me to be successful just as much as I want to be successful. Um, so that really didn't sway my decision at all. Um, it just kind of I feel like everything just kind of fell in place, and I'm 2 years later now, and I'm very happy with my decision, and I do not dread, quote unquote, going to work. Um, it all just kind of happens, and it's fun and interesting, and something that I would not be doing if I had a corporate job, or if I was still in the corporate job that I left. So that was very long-winded, but that's kind of how it came to be.
How's been the reaction to people in your community towards it?
Yeah. So, um, really receptive. I find that before I even started, I actually did some outreach to some local like community centers and things like that. Like, would you consider adding this programming? Um, because they're they have their, at least in my area, they kind of have their thumb on what the parents want or need, right? They're kind of in the trenches with programming, things like that. And immediately they were like, yes, we would totally add this to what uh, we're currently offering. So that was a really good pick me up, like initially before I even signed. Um, and the hardest thing that I found, um, which really isn't all that hard necessarily. Okay, yeah. So the hardest thing, which really hasn't been hard, it's just been more challenging, has been getting to the parents, right? So the schools always want something like this. The community centers always want something to this. It's the direct to the consumer that's a little bit more time consuming and a little bit, I don't want to say hit or miss, but you're looking for the right kind of parents, kind of like you said, the right kind, your son was the right kind of kid. You're looking for the parents of that right kind of kid. So, um, it's initially a broad reach, and then it's kind of like finding that avenue where those parents are looking for programming for their kids. So it's a little more time consuming, a little harder in that regard. But I find that any parent that I have, whether they're like direct through me or if they're through the school setting or the community center setting, they all love to talk to me about the program because their kids love to come home from the program and talk about it. And
Have
so,
you what have you found? I mean, you're 2 years in now. If that's like one of the main challenges, have you found an avenue to reaching those parents that you feel like works better than, than most?
I find that the more localized, um, like in my area, we have something called, you actually might have it too, Kids Out and About. That's amazing. It's just a listserv for the area that lists different types of events. They have a weekly newsletter that I can be a part of, and they have a huge audience. I also have a local group called Rochester Mom Collective and Macaroni Kids. And they're just all email websites and email um, uh, services, I guess you would call them, that I can add anything that I'm doing to them. I mean, obviously it costs money, it's marketing, right? But um, they basically their main goal is to compile all of this stuff that's happening in the area. And they typically have like a category for STEM and STEAM. So I get to list myself there. And then when parents are looking and they go to these main resources, I'm always listed there. Um, I list my summer camps with them. Um, and I list any of my full day fun days with them. My regular residencies that are happening through the community centers or through um, the schools, I don't typically list with them. The community centers are nice because if I'm hosting a program with them, they send out to everybody on their mailing list. They send out the catalogs and they send out all the registration information and they handle all of that. And that goes out to all the families in the given town. So it might be 20,000 or 30,000 people that are getting it. Not everyone is of the age to build a robot by any means, but it's visibility because Brooklyn Robot Foundry is listed in there. Um, so I've used them quite a bit, especially starting up, to kind of build that parent relationship, um, so that they know to come to me first if they're looking for programming outside of, the one night a week that I might be doing it um, someplace else.
And who generally, like, who are your teachers? That's one of the things that I'm kind of a little nervous about. I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of young adults these days, I could totally see them being like, yeah, I'm actually not going to show up. Have you had problems with like teacher retention or like, teachers not showing up?
I'd love to say no, but that's not reality because your assessment is completely right. Um, I have three teachers that currently work for me. One of them is full time, and two of them are part time. Two of my teachers have a teaching background. Um, the one that is full time has did not get his master's degree, so is not in has not gone to work in a district. He was working at a um, like a childcare facility. Um, so in the classroom in a different way, right? But is fantastic in the classroom with me. Um, and my other teacher actually has a full-time teaching job, so she's really only available like 3 p.m. and after,
Mhm.
which can get very difficult when you're scheduling things because after school programs start. My earliest after school program starts at 2:15. So immediately she's unavailable for that and can really only do things that start 3 o'clock or after. And depending on where they are, if she has to travel, it might even be later. Um, my third teacher is not a teacher. Um, she she's kind of done a whole lot of different things. And teaching is just one of the things that she does. Um, she works out fine in the classroom, but it's not her. Uh, she's not a teacher, and you can kind of see she's not a teacher. She's often not in the classroom by herself. She's often my assistant teacher, so she's there with somebody else who's running the classroom. As far as retention, um, I have not had to let anybody go at this point. However, I do deal with a lot of um, call-ins or schedule changes or availability changes. I constantly deal with it, to be completely honest. And I
That's
don't have
not
a big,
surprising.
yeah, honestly. Um,
Can I ask a question? Is there a
yeah,
reason why you only have it sounds like 2.5 teachers? I just would have guessed you would have more 2 years in, and that would potentially limit the issues you're having with like call-ins and stuff.
the biggest problem, I don't want to say problem. The biggest hindrance to that is the schedule. So the majority of everything that I have on the schedule regularly is from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. And that's not a full-time schedule for anybody. So I have part-time teachers who may or may not be available every day of the week, but I can't hire anybody full-time, which means they all have other jobs.
That's what I'm saying. So why can you help me understand why you don't have a bigger stable of teachers?
Because the ones that I do, my full-time teacher, right now, I have one full-time teacher, and he is covering the majority of my classes. And my other two teachers are filling into those time slots that might be double or triple booked, more like double booked, like if I have two classes on a Wednesday afternoon or something like that. So I don't have somebody on my payroll that is just like a floater that can just pop into class anytime someone comes in. That floater is me.
And are you teaching most class? I mean, obviously you can't be in two places at once, but it sounds like you do a lot of the teaching.
I did a lot of the teaching up until this past fall. And that's when I hired my first teacher on full time. So he was part time with me for a while, and then I had booked enough where I felt like I could cover him full time for any of the after school classes, and then any of those additional like office hours to fill in so that he has a full time schedule. So I can pull him away from the daycare, and he is entirely mine. Um, that was all based on what I had like looking forward, right? So how many classes I had booked looking forward, and how I want to continue to grow, because I can't be in the classroom if I'm always, I shouldn't say that. I can't grow my business if I'm always in the classroom.
Why did you decide to hire a full-time teacher rather than have a stable of teachers?
I can't find reliable teachers that are available in the hours that I need them. That are reliable enough to show up, that have the availability that I need, and have the flexibility that I need. Because a lot of my classes, and this is just kind of how my territory runs, a lot of my classes are not 12-week classes, which is typical residency for what Brooklyn was telling me, right? Like typically we do a fall semester and maybe a winter semester and a spring semester, so they're longer, right? My typical residencies are 4 to 6 weeks, so they're constant. My times are constantly changing. I could barely have a schedule out, and that's not going to be the schedule 4 weeks from now. It's always going to change. So it's easier. For me, it's easier to have a full-time teacher that is just available from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day, and just send him where I need to send him, rather than having 6 teachers that
you're trying to patch together constantly.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Because what I'm suspecting, like, is where I am and you are, there's a lot less like, I think that's what's so great about New York City and Brooklyn is like, you've got a lot of people that are frankly like aspiring actors who are looking for a gig like this. There's less of that out here, and probably where you are too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can we dig into that more too? Because Kim, you're specifically mentioning teachers as your teachers. And in my head, I wouldn't be hiring teachers as my teachers. But I don't know what I'm talking about, and you do. So can you dig into that a bit?
It was not a goal of mine to hire teachers. It just happened that way. And I think that it happened that way because when I first started and I first signed and I was teaching classes, I started in the summer. So I signed in February. My first classes were in June. And so then when I was looking to hire, teachers happened to be the ones that were applying to the positions because they were looking for summer opportunities. I think that's why my first teacher was a teacher. If I were to look for somebody now, even when I was looking for the other ones, like teacher is not a requirement by any means when I go look for employees. It is just something that kind of happened. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but I think back to Kim, what you said, there aren't as many, like I'm a second job to a lot of people. So teachers typically are a population that especially young teachers that look for second jobs. And so I think that's why a lot of them end up coming my way.
Thanks. I think that's like, I appreciate the honest answer because that's sort of one of my biggest kind of like, I still want to be able to go on vacation, and I don't want to be like in the middle of vacation and somebody's like, yeah, we can't show up to that birthday party, because it's like, you got to show up, you got to do those things. So I think that obviously like, hiring and finding the right people is the key to it all. And I'm sure that they're out there, but I just wanted to know how much that was a challenge for you. And I'm sure that, like it sounds like the full-time teacher position that solved a lot of the problems.
Definitely. And I'm actually going on vacation next week for the first time since I've hired my teacher full time.
Mhm.
And I feel really good about it. I feel like he can handle the things in the office that would need to get handled. I feel like we have our schedule set for the next week, and he knows what he's doing, and he's been full time now for almost 3 months. I
What's
do
his annual salary? Like when you calculate it out?
His annual salary is, so I'm guaranteeing him 35 hours, and he's actually paid hourly. And his annual salary is, I think, something like 42. Um, I'm obviously in a very different area than you guys though, so I don't know how to to translate that necessarily, but my wages are certainly different than New York City wages by far.
You feel like having a full-time teacher is helping you deal with the challenges of people calling in to change schedule.
Yes,
Okay.
I do. I do. And I think it's because he's full time, his schedule is set and he's more reliable. So
He has more to lose.
he has more to lose. Exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yep. And so he takes on the majority of the classes. The other two teachers are now taking on a smaller percentage of classes. But if there's an issue with them, one, they back up each other. A lot of times they're in the classroom together. So they back up each other, excuse me. And since hiring him on full time, I've only had to fill in the classroom 2 times. So if we were to have talked in October or November, that would have been a totally different number from me. So it's definitely changed the way that things have progressed.
Kim, can you help me understand what your growth has been like? It's really, really hard for me to think through like how I'm supposed to project how many schools and nursery schools I get into in year one and year two and year three. Can you shed some light on that, please?
Sure. These are going to be very vague numbers, but I've seen growth month over month, basically, for the past 2 years. Numbers wise, again, it's a little bit. Are you in the city?
No,
Okay.
I'm in the
So,
suburbs. I'm just
okay.
trying to understand, like, if there's 50 schools in my area, can I run 20 classes a week in the first year? Can I run 100 classes in the third year? I have no understanding of that.
Yeah. So for me, like I said before, I'm in a much different price point than the city for pretty much everything, um, basically everything. And my model is based on volume, 100%. So I can tell you, so this is year two, the start of year two, and it is by far my highest volume. Like these next 3 months are my highest volume, and I am running between 15 and 20 classes a week.
How many
That's
elementary
that like
schools are in your
the after
territory?
school classes, Kim?
Yes, well, all classes, 15 to
Okay.
20 a week.
Okay.
Yeah, 15 to 20 a week. How many schools are there in my territory? A lot. I would have to look at the number again. I think districts in my territory, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think 13 maybe. 13 districts.
Okay.
And each district has from, one elementary school up to, I mean, Rochester City Schools probably has 23
So
elementary
Kim,
schools.
if you're doing 15 to 20 classes a week, and that's by far your busiest, and you're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with 13 districts, do you
Mm-hmm.
think that the rate of the growth that you've experienced is mostly due to, you being a one-man shop, the economic environment that you live in up in Rochester, like I would have just honestly guessed that it would be higher than that. I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on why. And it sounds like the call is going to end in a minute. So while I'm here, I'll just say thank you so much for being upfront and honest. And this was extremely valuable, and I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you so much, Kim. I'm sure you're really busy.
Yeah, no problem. And I'll try to answer your last question. So, um, part of it, sure, one man show. I think the other part of it is the split in my area between funding sources. So, some of the schools that I'm in, is parents pay, and some of the schools that I'm in, it might be district pay, or the after school program might be run by not for profit or something like that. So I think that those um, finding those intricacies within each of the schools um, is is a big part of understanding how to approach each of the schools, each of the districts. I can tell you for Rochester City Schools, I don't actually work with the school district directly. I work with the not-for-profits that run their after-school programs. That might be the YMCA, it might be another local not-for-profit. In the suburbs where there's more money in the districts themselves, they don't necessarily partner with anybody to run their after school programs. It's all parent pay. So if the through PTA most likely. So if the PTA is feeling like the parents are willing to pay the price for a program, then we'll run it. If the PTA is feeling like it's not something that the parents will pay for, then we try to come up with an alternative. So I think it's just the environment for each of the schools and each of the districts that just um, really needs to be understood, and just work with them to figure something out. I have one district. There's 7 elementary schools. I am in one of them parent pay, and I'm in a second one that says I don't think the parents are going to pay for this, so we're not going to bring you on right now. So I think it's just very, very dependent on the schools themselves.